Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm so thrilled to be back. It was really fun last year, and I think it's going to be even more fun this year. So, first of all, I want to say, can I have a show of hands? How many people are stuffed people here? There's stuffed people? You got a lot of stuffed people. How many people are not stuffed people and can't wait to get rid of like their husband's stuff? Oh, quite a few. So the world is divided between stuffed people and non-stuffed people, and this is interesting for me because I got to spend the last 5 years working on my dissertation, which was talking about collectors. And so I wrote a typology of collectors, which the university was like, well, what is that about? Because of course my professors were not stuffed people. And so when I got my committee together, they said, well, why should we care? This is just stuff. So I ended up convincing them. So this is actually my first lecture as a newly minted PhD. So I thought, oh, thank you. So I thought what I'd do in honor of this, I would do the classiest card possible. So that is my rear end, as you see, and I'm poking my head into a huge, great big 17th century armoire, and I'm looking for treasure for this gentleman who actually inherited this armoire. So that's my card in honor of the Santa Barbara Women's Club, the classiest card that I've ever had in honor of you guys. I want to talk a little bit about the way we're going to value things, and so there's different types of valuation, and I've worked a couple of times for the Antiques Roadshow on television, and I have to tell you a secret, which is that the Antiques Roadshow on TV is not a one-day affair. It's not a one-hour affair. It's a 3-day affair, okay? So what happens is there's a long line of people, and there's a bunch of us, and I was hired as a researcher. So I come in, I get to bring my assistant with 2 computers and all kinds of databases and research. So we come off the plane with like this trail of stuff. You get put in a hotel room with, you know, all the internet stuff that you need. And you're there for 3 days. So the first day, there's a long line of people. You say, well, I want to look at that, that, and that. And they say, okay, fine. So you go meet the people, you take pictures, you look at the stuff, and then you go away for 3 days, and you research it for 3 days. Okay. Then the WGBH, who does the roadshow, they call the people that have that stuff that you've been researching, and they say, okay, the appraiser thinks that your stuff is worthy enough and we're going to put you on television. But we're not going to tell you what it's worth in advance, but we are going to put you on TV. So right away they know that their stuff is going to be worth something. So what happens next is they have a private meeting with a happiness coach. So that happiness coach does this. Now, the appraiser is going to tell you on live television that your stuff is going to be worth X. So what you're not going to do is say, holy, fill in the blank, or even something more racy, right? Like, you know, you're kidding me. So you're not supposed to say anything like that, or get out of here, or anything like that. So the happiness coach says to these people, you're allowed to say, oh my goodness, oh how fabulous, but you're not allowed to say, holy. So that is why it's not really as spontaneous as it sounds, but today is totally spontaneous. And so if you want to say holy, you can. What I think we'll do is we'll start, because we got a lot of stuff, I think what we'll do is we'll start in categories of stuff. And I think because my favorite thing in the world is glass. I think I'll start with glass and we'll compare. Okay, so we've got 4 types of glass, and let's talk about each of these types. The first 3, the pink, the blue, and this, are from the same era. So the same era, what I mean by that is they're from the last quarter of the 19th century. The blue glass is probably the oldest, but it's probably running neck to neck with the pink glass. I put the blue glass around 1870, and I will put the pink glass around 1880. This is a little later. This is 1890 to 1900, and this is really nice. This is probably the most expensive of all the 3 types of glass, because this is not only painted glass, but then it's got little tiny dots put over it, and that's another firing of the glass. And so this is a technique called coralline. So there's these 3 types of glass, and I'm going to put this down in 1 minute. These are the old champagne glasses. Now, when I tried to give these this shape to my son for a wedding, you know, that I've had in the household for a million years. Oh, by the way, how many of you had tried to give good china, silver, or crystal to your children or grandchildren? Do they want it? No. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? All my life I've collected these things for my son when he was married a couple years ago. He's like, no, Mom, I don't want the Spode. I don't want the, you know, the Steuben. I don't want the George and Sterling. So what do we do with it, ladies? What do we do with it? It's hard. I get questioned all the time. What do we do with this stuff? Well, we can talk about that a little later if we get time. But back to the glass. So glass is made in a couple of different ways. There's the glass that is blown. Now, I'm going to pretend I'm blowing glass, right? So here I have a long tube. At the end of the tube, I go into the furnace where the glass is gathering, and I attach the ponte, it's called, the tube, to that glass. I carefully take and maneuver it out, and I turn it. As I'm turning it, I blow into the tube. So that's blown glass. So the blown glass is a good example of that is the little blue cup that we saw. That's blown. How can you tell it's blown? Is because there'll be a ponte mark, or some people call ponte. There's a little mark at the bottom where the actual rod is broken away from the glass. So that's a ponte mark. Some of those ponte marks are ground down, but you'll still see a mark. The second type of glass is glass that's blown into a mold. So it's the same process, but then that gather of glass is put into a mold itself. You see? So here's a question for you. How do you tell the difference between glass that's blown into a mold and glass that's poured into a mold?
The imperfections.
That's one. Somebody said? Ponte mark? No, because the mold will cover that up, but in most cases the mold will cover that up, but sometimes. Not the shape. There will be seams because they're both blown into a mold. Okay, can you picture this? If you've got a cold waffle iron and you blow a balloon against the cold waffle iron, you get the indents of where the air is blowing in, so it's forcing. So the interior of a piece of glass that's blown into a mold will have the opposite of the front design. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's how you tell the difference. You can actually take your finger in there and you can feel where it's been blown into the mold. If it's been poured into a mold, there is no difference in the inside. It's smooth in the inside, okay? So what we have in this case, this is blown into a mold, and you can feel that it's smooth inside. But what's been added also is what we call clear crimping. Can you see this in the back where the handles are actually clear? So that's actually done afterwards. Those handles are applied afterwards. Now, here's another trick question. Why is this little glass lonely? Yeah, it's a set. What was served in this? No, not tea. Lemonade. Somebody said lemonade. Lemonade was a really popular thing in the 1880s, well, 1840 to 1880s, and it was considered very healthy. There would have been a set of those glasses, but it's really lonely because it's missing a what? Yes, a pitcher. And the pitcher would have been the same blue glass. It would have had the same Lily of the Valley designs. Now, the Lily of the Valley designs, this, are not done in paint. They're done in enamel. I know that the enameling has two centers, England and France. So this is an English or French enamel glass lemonade set, missing a pitcher, and probably missing 5 other glasses, but it could be as little as 3 other glasses. Now the champagne glasses are worth very little because of the fact we talked about nobody wants them anymore. So those I would put at a minimal $10, something like that. Your most expensive piece of glass is this, and I put this at $800. Second, I put this. Now, this is an interesting story too, the pink glass. I told you that the blue glass was lonely, but the pink glass is lonely too. Yes, this is my bona fide stuffed person right in the front row, Judy. She's telling me that it was one of a pair. When you have what we call mantle garniture, it's garni. It's like the parsley on the side of the plate. Your mantle garniture is your vase and your other vase, and usually your clock. And that's what we call. Now, for about 50 years, the last part of the 19th century, everybody got mantle garniture for weddings. When my mama was married, unfortunately, they got the thing that nobody wants today, which is called silver plate. We've got trunkloads of silver plate. Nobody can use that stuff. But anyway, I digress. So this is one of a pair, and this is called pink Bristol glass, made in England. So this is 1880s, and if it was a pair, we'd be talking around $400 to $500 the pair. As a single, we're talking around $150 the pair, or $150 single. So that covers the glass, I think. So John, if I stay still, come down here again, and let's do some pottery. You do. You have 4. So that is French or English enamel glass, 4 of them. I would say 300. 300 to set. If you had the picture, we'd be talking 600, 700. Yeah. Okay, now this is really cool stuff. It looks kind of modern, doesn't it? It's really not. It's really not. It's from the first quarter of the 20th century. And this is a sugar bowl and a creamer. So, John, here, let's put that Chinese vase, the Indian, but careful, the top will come off of that. Yeah. That, and this. Maybe show that around, and we'll talk about those 3. So we're going to talk about 3 pieces of porcelain. So the Chinese porcelain, then we're going to talk about the humidor with the Native American on it, and we're going to talk about these pieces here. I'm going to start with these pieces, the blue pieces. So is anyone familiar with a group of people in East Aurora, New York, called the Roycrofters? Is anyone? Yeah, you have to see the Roycrofters. So Albert Hubbard, in the last quarter of the 19th century, made a ton of money with soap. And he decided that he was going to be a writer. And so he started to write in the style of the art books made famous by William Morris in England. And so he did these art books and talked about, oh, life is joyful, follow your bliss, and blah, blah, blah. And then when those became popular, he decided, I got all this money, why don't I build a utopian community of craftsmen artists? So he did. He built a utopian community in East Aurora, outside of Buffalo, and he imported hundreds of craftsmen artists. What are craftsmen artists? We also call them arts and crafts or mission style. Craftsmen artists are artists that work with their hands, and Albert Hubbard used to say, oh, they have to work with happy hands. You see, so it was anti-industrialist, anti-machine, and so things were made craft-wise, and it was a reaction against the frou-frou-ness of the Victorian times. So if we consider, for example, you see, this is a contrast right here. See the frou-frou-ness versus the earthy crunchiness, right? So this is actually from the first quarter of the 20th century. This is in the arts and crafts style, and the theme was to get as close to handmade as possible, get as close to rugged, natural as possible. And actually, they weren't successful, and I'll tell you why. If you've got a factory making all kinds of machine-made pottery, the populace is going to buy the pottery that's 5 cents as opposed to the pottery that's $5 and made by hand. So they really kind of talked themselves out of business. And so that was the end of the utopian community. That is a beautiful set, and someone would pay you $800 for that set. That's a gorgeous set. This is fantastic. This, whose is this? Where did you find this, Whitney? You collect it. Okay. So this is a remarkable piece. This is Native American piece. It's absolutely beautiful. So Nakama, made in Meriden, Connecticut, and this is used. What is this form? What was inside? I think I already said what it was. Tobacco is a humidor. Now, this is interesting because Whitney, what you have is what we call a double collectible. First of all, that's a rare pottery, as you know. Second of all, it's a rare form. It's Native American, yeah, Native American. And you see, we associate Native American with tobacco, so it's self-referential. But it's also a third cross collectible because it's tobacco related. So it falls along the sort of scale of tobacco or smoking collectibles and sewing collectibles. Who sews anymore? Nobody sews anymore. So sewing collectibles are valuable. And also, here's a little hint. What I think is going to become collectible, believe it or not, is paper. Because the actual graphically designed paper by handmade graphic artists is kind of obsolete. I mean, if you design anything for yourself on the computer, it's Photoshop, right? So we don't have graphically designed paper anymore. So I predict there's a word for that. It's called ephemera. So I predict ephemera is going to be hot coming up. So this beautiful humidor is intact. It's what we call a three-way collectible. It is tobacco related or smoking related, so that means it would appeal to the smoking related people. It is a great potter. It would appeal to a collector of the potter, and would also appeal to collectors of Native American imagery. And that's respectfully done. I don't think it's not like some of the Native American imagery that we would see coming out of the first quarter of the 20th century. It's nicely, respectfully done. I'm going to put that piece around $1,000. Yeah. So the last thing we talk about here in the porcelain world is going to be this Chinese ginger jar. These are probably my favorite colors in the whole world. I love these colors, these greens and these blues. And this is a beautiful ginger jar, said so because you've got the lid and that's the form. Now, what tells the age is the stamp on the bottom, China. Okay, so China on the bottom means, and it's in red too. Who can tell me the date of the McKinley Tariff Act? So McKinley was in office, so let's just make it easy. The first quarter of the 20th century. Because, and it's sort of a little bit the way this country goes back and forth with imports, and we're going to make it harder for people to import into our country, so we are going to make a law that everything coming into this country has to be stamped with country of origin. So China then had to stamp things China. Japan refused to stamp things Japan. What did Japan agree to stamp things? Nippon. Nippon, that's right. So, and then we had a problem with that, and we eventually forced them not to do that. So, but China had to stamp things China. Now, the fun thing was, we can date that ginger jar because it says China stamped in red. We can date it to the first quarter of the 20th century. The problem is that because of the First World War and because there was a lot of poverty in China, China was trying to export as much as they could to make the money to people that could pay for those things. So what they would do, and it always foxes me as an appraiser, what the really savvy people would do who wanted to export Chinese porcelain was that they would stamp them anyway, right? So it would be a Ming vase from the 15th or 16th century that would be stamped with China. And everybody said, oh, well, that was made just a week ago. So you do see that stamp on very old things. I happen to know, though, that that is not one of those old things. How do I know that? I'll tell you. This is the most profound thing that you'll ever hear in your life. Ready? Old things look and feel old. I've been appraising for almost 30 years, and it took me a while to figure that out. But they do. This is too crisp. The foot is too new looking. If it was really 15th century or 16th century, you'd see more wear to the foot. You'd see more evidence of little nicks, possibly. The finish wouldn't be quite as bright. You see, old things look and feel old. And while I'm on that topic, they also smell old in a lot of cases, which is why I can't figure out how people can buy art antiques online. It's amazing to me because I have to feel them. I have to hold them to understand that I'm getting one. Oh, here's another piece of pottery, by the way. This is Francoma. So Francoma is a really interesting, this is sort of the 40s and the 50s. Now, my older brother, I can remember this. My mother, we grew up in a farm town in Illinois, and my mother was captivated by colonial furniture by Ethan Allen. She loved maple colonial furniture. So my brother had a bed, and it was a cowboy bed. So the bed was in the shape of like an oxbow, and there were cowboy like horseshoes for the drawer pulls, and it was all thematic, and it was all like old American West. And so Francoma picked up on that idea. And they're actually from the Southwest. Francoma is a factory from the Southwest. And they decided, let's make everything look sort of cowboy. And so they did a really rugged finish. Sometimes they did little, I have a picture which has a little wagon wheel on it. But they made things in a real sort of cowboy theme. And this is an example. It's meant to look like an old cowboy boarding house picture. But it isn't, in fact. It's in fact from the 1940s, 1950s. And that piece is worth about $100. Here's another piece. Now we're getting into what should look like porcelain, but it's not. This is actually ceramic. So this is a soft paste. Correct myself. This is not a hard paste porcelain. This is a soft paste ceramic. And how I can tell that is the color, the white color. If this was porcelain, it would be a brighter white, and it wouldn't need to, believe it or not, porcelain doesn't need to be glazed. If this were not glazed, it would not be water repellent. Only porcelain is water repellent. That's because porcelain is fired, it's vitrified at over 2,000 degrees. So, but this is not, this is a form of ceramic, and a very famous style called chinoiserie. Chinoiserie, does anyone know what chinoiserie means? Yeah, my stuffed person again up here, Judy. In the Chinese style, chinoiserie. Chinoiserie caught on 2 times in our history. Caught on once in the 18th century after George designed the Brighton pavilions in the chinois Indian style. And he was Prince Regent back in 1804. Then it caught on again in the late Victorian era when when Britain, Commodore Perry opened the shores of Japan in the 1850s, and the chinoiserie style caught on again. So this is from the second wave of the chinoiserie style. Now, double points. What do you serve on this plate? We have fruit, no? Who said cake? You're right. How do you know? That's what cake plates look like. That's right. That's right. Do you see the little handles? As if you're really going to use them, but for some reason cake plates have this little sort of, what do you call it? A nod. Like a nod. Okay, let's be a handle. And they usually have little handles. Now these were given as wedding presents, and they usually had associated little serving plates as well. So that would have been part of the set. So let's see, that on its own is worth about $40. The ginger jar, I didn't give you a price on that. A ginger jar is worth about $250. So now we can talk about real porcelain, in which we've got a couple of pieces. So this is Kronenberg. This is Danish porcelain, and Danish porcelain is always pretty fine stuff. There's, you know, the blue onion and other is it Francodanica with all the flowers on it. So I love Danish porcelain. And so, Flora Danica, thank you. And so, yes, thank you. So she's telling me that Flora Danica is also Bing & Groendahl. This is also Bing & Groendahl, one of my very favorite potters. And nice porcelain. This Danish porcelain is really the only porcelain that's holding its value as sets. So, you know, you might have Spode, you might have all sorts of English porcelain. Danish porcelain's holding its value. This, do you have a whole set? Eva, do you have a whole set? How many pieces? 12. Service for 12. So all the serving pieces, yeah. So we're talking around the $10,000 mark still for Danish porcelain, yeah. Yeah. This is another porcelain here. Cup and saucer. And, oh, we have a couple of examples of Limoges. So this is Limoges, and this is Limoges. Now, what is Limoges? It's French, yeah. But it's a place in France. So there's many types of Limoges, many types of Limoges. It's a place in France, so it's not necessarily a one factory in France, so it's a place. So Limoges goes in waves. It has its great value, and then when Limoges unites with Haviland, it kind of goes down in value. So Limoges is more valuable than Haviland Limoges. And so in this case we have, let's see, we have a little creamer and sugar, and we've got a little teacup and saucer. So the creamer and sugar, I'm going to say, is missing its lid. That devalues it kind of a lot. So I would say that's a $40 set. And on the tea set, now, whose is the tea set? The little teacup?
One cup.
Yeah, that's yours. So that without its set is worth probably $15. Not a lot of money on that.
I have
Yeah.
6.
You do have 6? Okay, so now you're talking about $100. Yeah. Do we have one other piece of porcelain? I thought it was, yes, we do. So this is another piece of porcelain. So far we've looked at European porcelain. This is a piece of Asian porcelain. You know, we never quite got the hang of porcelain the way the Chinese and the Japanese got, because you can see through this stuff. You can really see, it's so eggshell thin you can see through the stuff. Now this is a punch cup, and it's a great example of the cross between a couple of cultures, because the punch cup is known to be a European drink. Not only that, you have the Asian lightness and the translucence of the porcelain, but you also have the little grape design, which is also European, not Chinese at all. So it's an amalgam of a couple of cultures. If this was a whole punch set in this translucence I would say you're talking about $600 to $700 for the whole punch set. When you have two. Do you have the big bowl? No, okay. So that's what I mean when you punch set. So it's a punch bowl and the little, in fact, I don't think we do punch anymore, do we? No. So this is Leslie's, and Leslie has to get back to work. So I have to do this for Leslie right now before we do anything else, which is, this is what I was talking about when we said paper ephemera. So this is works on paper that's done, let me show you. Look at that. A whole big book of Mother Goose. And this was from her mom, Doris, who taught preschool and kindergarten, etc. And so she must have been given these. These are published in 1945. And I think they're absolutely charming. They're just beautiful. I took a look at this Little Boy Blue, but let me see. That's Pussycat, Pussycat. Isn't that cute? Now, paper ephemera is starting to, like I say, be hot, hot, hot. So I'm going to say hang on to that. Don't sell that. Hang on to it. And I think what we're looking at is the $75 to $100 range. But you know what increases value is rarity. And paper it'll get rarer and rarer and rarer because it doesn't last. So hang on to that. Don't store it in anything with petrochemicals. No saran wrap, no like the stuff you get when you clean your clothes. Don't wrap it in that. Don't wrap it in anything with petrochemicals. Don't ask me why, but it's not good for the paper. It'll age the paper right away. So let's see, what should we do? Let's do some metal. We've got some good metal stuff. Let me start with, I don't know, John, can you put the camera on one thing and would come down and help me for a minute? Arbuckle model from London, from the Paris exhibition, from the Conservatoire National in Paris, winning the Grand Medal of Honor, J. Howard Foote, the sole U.S. agent, New York and Chicago. That's really cool. Let's take that around, John. And maybe take this around too. Can you do both hands? Okay. So let's talk about the trumpet. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So I had a really interesting appraisal of a really expensive saxophone. Lady came into the office and she brought me an expensive saxophone. And it was expensive because there are certain instruments that are sterling or silver plate, or they're gold plate. And this is a beautiful piece. I'm not familiar enough with horns to know. Isn't that a flugelhorn? It's a bugle? It's a bugle. A cornet? Is it yours? No. What is it? Cornet. It is a cornet. Okay, it is a cornet. So we know that it's talking about the exhibition. So when was the British exhibition in London? Well, we know it was 1851. So it was the Grand Exhibition. It was King Albert's exhibition, from whence he designed the Crystal Palace. And so that was all the great, manufacturers of everything did the first sort of World's Fair of stuff in the Crystal Palace. And that has a medallion on it from that. So we know that that dates to right around the middle of the 1800s. As regards to, I'd have to look that up, but would you allow me to take a guess on the value of that? Yeah. So the saxophone I did, which was a similar age and a similar provenance, was $6,800. So I think this is going to be close to $2,000 to $3,000, maybe more. But this I would have to look up. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, that makes sense because this prototype was shown in 1851. It has that stamp. Doesn't say that date on it, but I happen to know that that stamp means it was shown at the Crystal Palace exhibition in 1851. Beautiful. By the way, was it a relative's?
No, there was an auction.
And it comes with the original case as well. So John was showing you this. This is kind of interesting because this has lost its silver plate. So this is what base nickel metal looks like, and this has lost its silver plate over time. And some people say, well, no, 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 it's just supposed to be, oh, thank you so much. This is supposed to be just pewter. No, this isn't pewter. This is an example of a pot that has lost its silver plate. How do I know? Because I can see little bits and pieces where the silver plate was. So this is not worth that much because of that fact, but there's a lot of things out there that have lost their silver plate. So I would say $25 on that. Okay, an iron. So these irons, you could get them in sets, and how I know that is because my grandmother's mother in Germany was a well, the word for iron is buglen, and she was a professional ironess. And I've inherited, not only was she a professional ironess, but all she did was iron collars and cuffs, because that was pretty much her specialty. And she had all these special irons for collars and cuffs. And so now these hot irons are not that valuable, but I predict they will be, because here again, they're going to be obsolete, I'm sure, one day. So that is worth about $50 to $75 now, but that is something to hang on to. Here's another piece of iron, and this is wrought iron. And I said to John, you know, this has got a pretty severe case of rust. This is a child's wrought iron toy. It's got a pretty severe case of rust. This dates from 1920 to 1930, and it's a great piece. You'd be surprised, children's toys, especially the wrought iron, they're going up there. So this piece I'm going to say between $400 and $600, but here's my prescription. You don't want to paint over it, because of course that ruins the patination, but you want the rust to stop. So John suggested, because he works on cars a lot, oil. So oil that thing, like you would oil your fry pan, you know, you run it from. So oil this thing, so at least the rust is going to stop. But I would say between $400 and $600 on that. Here's again little toys. Now these are cast iron or tin, one of the two, and there's 4 of these up here. Now these are really hot, and you know what's so funny is my son is 26 or so, and right now he says, Mom, you got to look out for me for some really rare antiques. I said, sure, what can I find you? I'm always in the thrift stores, right? He says, I want some vinyl records. So I guess everything comes around again. Now that age group wants vinyl records. They're crazy for them. And likewise, you know, everything comes around again. Now, he called me the other day, he says, Mom, I got a friend and he collects some really rare antiques. I said, well, what should I be looking out for now? He says, Hot Wheels. So you see, so those little children's toys, those little toys, they're not Hot Wheels, but you see it comes and goes like that so the 26-year-olds, they think it's very rare, these Hot Wheels, that somebody who's 50 maybe played with when they were there a little younger. So those can be pretty valuable. Some of the Hot Wheels can be $2,000 each. So I'm going to say that those $75 each on those. Here's another piece of iron, and I told the lady, I'm going to surprise you, because she said, I don't know what they are. I've had them for years. I don't know what they are. And I'm assuming they were models, and they are iron. And you see they're the right and the left. And they have the spot. The telltale thing is they have a hole in the bottom. And things like this don't have a hole in the bottom for no reason at all. The hole supported something. And whatever it supported, didn't come out the front because the front is flush with the table. So whatever the hole was meant to support came from the middle of the shoe. So, what is it? What do you think it is? Andirons? No, not shoe shine. No, something to form leather. No, not bookends. Not umbrella stand. Yes, you got two so far. You're a smart one because it looks like a boot scraper. It would have been just it, right? And so what it's missing is, of course, you'd see the hole in the back. And this would be where? At the front door or at the side door where your mudroom, remember mudrooms? Where your mudroom was, and this would be your boot scraper. And it would be a reminder, scrape those boots before you go in. So I would say 300 on this. This is a beautiful piece. Sue actually brought this in from her husband's aunt, purchased in the 1960s. Navajo piece, and I love turquoise jewelry, but that's a beautiful Navajo pendant. And what you want to look at with Navajo jewelry is you want to look to see if there's a signature. Some of the best families in the Navajo Nation that you're looking for a signature, Big A is a good one, but you're also looking to see if it's Mexican silver. If it's Mexican silver in the style of Navajo jewelry, you're looking for spratling. You're looking for spratling, or you're looking for a sign, Taxco. Taxco, right. So in this is unsigned, but I can tell this is what we call early trading post material. So we're talking about 1920 to 1930, and I think this is probably worth $500 to $600. And this is pretty cute. So the lady who owns this, she reads my column. I do a column every Monday in the news press, and people send me pictures and I write about their things. I also do a radio program on Fridays. It's live 10 to 11, and then it re-airs Friday night at 8 and Sunday at 11. And I usually talk about stuff. Sometimes I talk about happenings in the art world, but usually people, for some reason, they send me pictures of dolls. And I actually hate dolls. Because dolls scare me, and they've scared me from the time I was a little girl. So this little lady, she comes up to me and she says, I know you hate dolls. I've read your articles and you hate dolls, but could I bring something from the car that's a doll? I said, yeah. You know, this is the way the world works. Because I've always been afraid of dolls. In fact, I was a little girl and there was a doll in a drawer that used to glow at me at night. I was totally freak out about that. But when I first actually hung my shingle, Susan Quinlan was kind of just getting rolling. She said to me, we want to make you appraiser on record for the Susan Quinlan Doll Museum. Thank you, Susan. I'll take it, but Anyway, this is a Sonia Henny doll. And what happens is Sonia Henny, she was quite a remarkable figure skater. She came to Provenance, yeah? I always get that mixed up, Provenance. Right in the Second World War, and there was some real political issues because she was kind of close to Goebbels, and she had lunch with Adolf, and the Norwegians didn't like her too much because she would refuse to throw in her allegiance with the resistance movement both in Denmark and Norway. So she was persona non grata for many years in the Scandinavian countries, but she made a real name for herself. She was a very powerful businesswoman. She has one of the best contemporary art museums in Norway. She gave the Norwegian people a contemporary art museum. So that's a Sonia Henny doll. And those, they're kind of rare. Why? Because little girls were really not supposed to play with them. They were supposed to look at them, dress them, and sort of thing. So that particular doll is worth between $600 and $700. Then let's see, there's another sort of lifelike figure in that box. So this is marked the Society 2001 Jennifer Members Figure, Florence. And it's one of the new materials. And there are new ivory materials and there's new porcelain materials, and let me explain. So new ivory can be made by taking ivory chips and putting it into an amalgam, much like you do if you were a dentist. So this is also not really porcelain, it's an amalgam. So it's not porcelain, it's closer to plastic than a porcelain. So this, I would say, hang on to it. It might become a collectible later. Right now it's not worth much. I would say $50. But it's an example of the new materials that are coming out. Okay, there's always one in every show. And what this is an example of total worthlessness. And what I mean by this is, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, but this is what you need if you're going to serve hard-boiled eggs. So here's your hard-boiled eggs, right? They go there, or soft-boiled eggs, I should say. They go there, and here's your little egg cup. And then on the side here is where you hang your, you slot your toast. And then here's your little spoon, and in this little basket you would put your eggshells. Yes. You could put jelly, I suppose. You could put jelly, yeah, you could. But on the other hand, yeah, it could be eggshells. I mean, it's sort of like a comment on culture, isn't it? It's like this, do you really need this to eat eggs? But it's it's a comment on culture. It's what you can do to go over the top to show status. And one of the things I want to mention is there's one in every show where I get to say it's a good example of how stuff confers status on the family. So if you have this kind of stuff on your table, it means that you have the leisure time to eat this way. And also you have the money, right? So this is last quarter of the 19th century, and it's worth about $200. It is silver plate, it's not sterling. Let's see. I think we're ready to hit some artwork right now. So this is a painting called Squaw Travois, Squaws at Work. And this is not oil, it's not pastel, it's giclée. And it's an early giclée. Yes, it's a giclée. So what this is a giclée. So it's a photomechanical print over which is an amalgam that is meant to mimic the stroke of the brush. So many people bring these to me and say, I've got this painting. It looks and it feels like a painting, but it's not a painting. There's no evidence of the oil. When I say evidence of the oil, I mean that the oil itself will follow the form of what it's being painted, and this is just a flat amalgam over the top. Look at it closely after the show and you'll have a, so this is worth about $25. Here's another treatment. This is another treatment. So this is in the 17th century Dutch style, 17th century Dutch still life style, but as a matter of fact, it's not 17th century, it's right in the middle of the 20th century. And then you look at it and you say, oh, how can that be? There's so much like aging to it. But take a good look. The brown that's rubbed in between the brush strokes is an applied brown. So it's not an old painting, it's meant to look old. And so it's 20th century meant to look like a 17th century Dutch still life. But you take a very close look and you'll see. It's sort of like People like to say, I've distressed this piece of furniture also. You sure have distressed it. I think that piece is worth about $250. Let's look at this painting. Oh, John, could you set the camera and... Come on, take a tour around with this. This is Alfred Mitchell. This is owned by Marcia Orland. She says she got it from her parents. What do you know about it? How do you know how old it is? I never found out about it. Well, you're about to find out about it, Marcia. Let's take this. Oh, there's Marcia here. Okay. This artist, Alfred Mitchell, was one of the California plein air artists, and he was incredibly famous after he passed. When it was the Laguna Art Colony, Guy Rose and all those people, nobody really knew of those people, but now they do. At auction, you're looking at about $24,000. Okay, Marcia, remember, no holy, can't say, we got our happy coaches here. Right. I know. Take a look at it. It's absolutely beautiful, and it dates from the 1920s to the 1930s. California plein air in the original frame. It is very dirty, which is really good for it, which means nobody fooled with it. And if you decide to auction it at any point in time, it's great because whoever wants to run it through auction wants that original condition. And they want their buyer to be able to restore it if their buyer wants to restore it. Many times they don't. But this whole school of California regionalism from the 20s and the 30s is huge. That's a great, great piece. It could even go for more. Auctions are funny. If you get two people that want something,
They don't care.
they don't care. Anyway, that's my guess is that it would probably start around 20,000. Pretty good?
We'll talk.
Okay. So let's do another painting, well, another work on paper. This is by one of my favorite artists, and a dear friend of mine has just purchased a work by Channing Peake, and this is by Channing Peake himself, who's a local. His wife is still around, and in fact, the museum, I think it was the Wilding Museum, has a show at the moment of his work, and
They know that James Gallagher Street had it. He was my uncle. He was married.
Channing was your uncle?
Well, his first wife was with me.
Ah, okay, not his second wife. The second wife is one I know,
No,
yeah.
I know. And the second wife is younger than I am.
Yes, yeah. So Channing's work, if you go to the new airport, you see there's a great big mural, and that's his work. But a wonderful artist and a local artist. And frankly, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. I think it's coming, but I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
I don't think so either.
But he was so talented, and he knew everybody. He knew Picasso, and he knew all of the people that were painting at the time. Ah, interesting, a relative of his right here. So I would say this is 1,000 to 2,000, and this is actually a study for the Restaurant del Paseo mural by Channing Peake. So, and what is it? It's a lithograph, and it's a numbered lithograph. When we say numbered, that means it's a fraction. The fraction is on the bottom, the addition, how many, the top fraction, the number within that addition. So this is 69 over 75. So it's the 69th strike out of 75. Yeah. I think there's This is not a painting, but it is a painting. So it's on porcelain. It's a painting of a little child reading a book on porcelain. On the back says Kind mit Buch, child with book, and it says after Greuze. And Greuze is a French artist who was fairly famous in the late 18th century. And what happened was in the great porcelain manufacturing centers of Europe, they decided that it would be interesting to paint on porcelain with that lumosity that porcelain can bring. And so KPLM and another couple other beautiful houses of porcelain started to do these. They were not meant to be eaten off of, they were just meant to be decor. And so these are worth quite a bit because of the fact they so easily broke. This is worth 800 to 1,000. Yeah. So now I'm down to the bottom of the barrel, and I'm going to share with you a couple of things that are still outstanding. Here is from Marcia, again, bought in San Francisco. Told it's Chinese, it is Chinese, but it's not sterling. And when I say sterling, sterling is a fraction. Sterling is 800 parts silver over 1,000 parts metal. You can have silver that is not 800 over 1,000. You can have silver content as low as 400 over 1,000. The standard for European silver is 800 over 1,000, but the standard for English silver is 800 or more over 1,000. This is one of those which is very low in silver, but it is a little silver, but not a lot. So this is worth about $50, $50, $75. Comic Animals and Their Adventures from Louise. Comic Animals, and it's an alphabet rhyme book. It's one of those indestructible on linen. And you know what determines the value of children's books more than anything else is condition. Because children always wreck their books. And so this is in fairly good condition, but not in the tip-top condition, not enough to be a rare book. So on this book, I'm going to say $50 on that. Let's see if I covered this. Oh, I should talk about this real fast. This is very interesting. This is from Phyllis Westwick, a lavalier from an elderly aunt, Ann Starr Westwick, who worked in the Evans Antique Shop in the El Paseo in the 60s. And her aunt said it was worn by courtesans on their breeches. I have to differ. I don't think it was worn by courtesans on their breeches. I don't think so. But what I think it was worn as what we call a fob. So a lady would want to know where her watch was at any one given point, right? And so this was a watch fob, and the watch would hang. The watch would hang from the hook that's on the back of this. And this is a combination of sterling and gold in a beautiful sort of black treated sterling, a patinated sterling. And this is probably fairly old. This is probably 1830. And I would say that this is probably worth around $800. Two incredible, and this is, Elizabeth tells me, she says, you know, I would have brought in the whole machine. And on these rolls we have songs. These are Edison rolls, and she has the whole big machine with the big blaring thing at her house, and she's got 200 of these. Now, what determines their value is the condition. And also if they're in their original boxes, and look how good a shape they are. Isn't this amazing? Blue amber record. So the whole collection, well, let me talk about this. I told you my son is interested in vinyl. This is fairly early vinyl. What makes one record more valuable than the other is the music on it. So what is the most collectible are the rarest songs. So it would be, for example, like early Hawaiian music from 1920s when they were first starting to record it, or really early Appalachian music. That sort of stuff is what really, really, it's not the Frank Sinatras, of which there were thousands made. So if her Edison has really rare songs on it, it's doubly collectible. So I'm going to hold off my opinion until I know what songs are on there, but they generally run about $200 a roll. So what have we not done? We've done this. Oh. Oh. Oh, that's good timing. So we're talking about records, and look at that. So this is from Susie. It's a record player. She has a box of records that go to it, about 5 records that go to it. You know, isn't it amazing? I gotta say, you know, I have about 20,000 records on this. And you know, isn't it funny? When I was a kid in Illinois, I had this little pink plastic record player that I would take to slumber parties, and it weighed a ton. And this also, I mean, this is earlier, much earlier than that, but look at that. That's amazing. And the fact that it's a box and all that, original, I'm going to say, you've got the horn that goes to it? Yes, but you see, this is moving from the parlor version, which your compatriot has, and this is actually the semi-portable version, because it's in a box and it can be moved. Those early ones, I mean, she couldn't bring that because it's a parlor version, right? So this is a movable one, so this is a portable machine. I would say by the rarity factor, 800 to 1,000 on that. And everybody's probably getting tired of sitting, so I'm just going to say one other thing. I've recently written a book, and I brought some samples of the book. And these are half size, so the book itself is double this size. And the books are on these CDs, and what they are is there's 300 pages of common questions that people ask me all the time. And we are selling these for $15 each if anybody's interested. So finally, I can't thank you enough, Santa Barbara's Women's Club, and I hope you have me back next year.